Next up, we're gonna stick with Martin, who's already given us a great introduction, and we're gonna have I believe it's a fireside chat with Božo Janković. I hope I've got one of those right, Božo. I think that's right. From GameBiz Consulting, who's going to. Hi, is that right? Was that about right?
Yeah, it was really good.
Good. No, I know it's English people trying to pronounce a name that is with accents is always hilarious. But you guys are going to talk now. Think about rethinking the ad monetization waterfall. That's what it says in my notes anyway. So we all like waterfalls, right? So that's good. So are you all good to crack on? I'm here in the background. If you need me, I'll go and collect the questions again. But you all good?
Yeah, I think it's good. Which we probably we'll do some kind of. I'll do re-intros just in case people are tuning in for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last one. So yeah,
cool. The floor is yours. Well, actually, but before you, Božo, where are you? Where are you in the world at the moment?
Based in Belgrade, Serbia.
Oh, Serbia, lovely place. What's the weather like over there?
It's boiling hot, 40 degrees today, the hottest day this year. So yeah.
Me, bit of a heat wave there. Okay, fair enough. Well, I hope you stay nice and cool in this chat. I'm going to leave Martin to take over now.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Chris. Cool. So thanks for tuning in for this this fireside. We were going to be talking here. There's some interesting things happening in the ad monetization world. The move to header bidding. So we thought it'd be interesting to kind of get Božo's insights into this and to talk through some changes in how they're kind of affecting developers. So quick intro for me, I'm Martin Macmillan. I'm the founder and CEO of Pollen VC. We provide credit facilities to game and app developers, allowing them to scale their UA faster. Without further ado, let me pass over and then perhaps do quick intros, and then we can get into the kind of the main topics.
Absolutely, yeah. So hello everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Božo Janković, and I work as a business development manager at GameBiz Consulting. We're a consultancy firm for the video games industry. One of the areas in which we help game developers is monetize their games with ads. This means that we're basically helping developers to increase their revenue and ARPDAU by offering our expertise and knowledge in this area. So yeah, we've been lucky enough to work with the likes of Wargaming, Good Game Studios, Lockwood Publishing, Creative Mobile, Nanobit, and many other developers. And we managed to help them grow their ad revenues.
Cool, that's great. So I guess things have been changing a lot in the ad monetization world, and there's this sort of this move. This kind of, it feels like it's kind of inevitable from sort of traditional waterfall structures into bidding. But just generally, I mean, maybe it's worth doing just a little quick recap of recent history and the sort of like the direction of travel, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we can probably summarize it in a few sentences in how basically this ad serving ecosystem has evolved in the last few years. I'd say that the basic setup in which developers used to work was, you just plug in one ad network, you choose one, and then you get ads from them. Of course, that very quickly evolved into a more complex system, where instead of working with one ad network, one ad partner, you wanted to introduce more of them. This was for various reasons, such as scale of the game. If you have millions of players, then one ad network will not be enough to suffice all of those users. Then the other obvious reason is increasing competition. So trying to make the networks compete with each other to pay the best price for each and every impression. And then we went from that model where you're working with a black box mediation, where each network is getting impressions, but you don't really know what's going on in the background. Developers and networks became more savvy. They started doing these first fill deals. So you basically negotiate with a network which price they're going to pay for a first impression in a specific country. And that was a lot of, back and forth, a lot of manual work, communication between the network and the developer. And I'd say that from that, we've come into a place where we started doing multiple instances or multiple calls, where each network could be called several times within the mediation, within the waterfall, and the developer would be the one who is going to really define the price at which the network can buy those impressions. And this is where more control got into the hands of developers. And I'd say that it brought a lot of benefit, probably 20-30% increase in ECPM and consequently ad revenues for the developers. But on the other hand, it increased heavily the manual work, the operational work. And this is where header bidding or in-app bidding came in conveniently into place, where you're kind of getting those benefits of getting more granular and maximizing the price for each impression. But on the other hand, the manual work got down quite significantly. So I'd say that we're right now not in bidding yet, but we're definitely getting there.
Yeah, see, it seems like there was a lot of people were really having to, it was a very, very manual exercise managing all of these different waterfalls, and everything was kind of backwards looking, right? So you were looking at sort of historicals as opposed to kind of real times, if you like. So, it'd be fair to draw the comparison maybe with like a Darwinian, evolution from, from one thing to the next, right? So then in terms of like a what does it like a full bidding scenario look like? And there's obviously like a transition step. So who's what sort of people are embracing it, or are some people kind of behind? Because obviously you don't just flick a switch and move to a whole new world overnight, right? What's the sort of the transition that's going on?
You're absolutely right. There's definitely no magic switch that can just make this possible to switch from hybrid media from let's say a waterfall with multiple instances to a full bidding setup. I think that for the last 2, probably 3 years already, we've been talking about bidding. And in the beginning there wasn't much going on, but now there definitely is. I'd say that we're right now in a hybrid mediation model. This is probably the dominant solution which developers are using at the moment, which means that some of your partners, some of the ad networks that we are working with, they are providing their inventory, their demand through the bidding technology. So you don't have to manage anything, and you just need to plug them in, and they're going to bid for every single impression. So for them, you can work like that. But there are still several networks, especially like on the big guys who are not bidding yet, and they are not providing their demand through a bidding source, which means that you still have to manage them manually. And this is why I say it's hybrid, because some networks are bidding and some networks are not bidding yet. And so basically the ad monetization managers are kind of in between these two setups. A full bidding setup would be, of course, when each and every network that you work with is providing a bid. So how much money they're willing to pay for every single impression, without the developer, without the ad monetization manager having to worry about the prices, manual work, and things like that.
Right. So, and then I mean, full bidding, would that be like just a completely? I mean, what's the utopia here? Is it like select your networks, your mediation partner, press the button and then sit back, and just know that it's all being done kind of in a completely optimized way?
Yeah, so I'd say that it's still not that simple. You would still need to choose with which networks you want to work with. That would be one. You always have to make sure that you're working with partners that are credible, that there's no fraud, things like that. So there's still some due diligence that needs to be done. There probably wouldn't be that much work on a daily basis to optimize things, but you could still run some A/B tests and try to optimize in different ways. Maybe for some specific territories, you would like to choose some additional partners. So there's definitely a shift going on in what the ad monetization manager would do in a scenario where you have some of the networks bidding, or where you have all of the networks bidding.
How long do you think it'll be for that sort of that hybrid world? Will everyone be, I mean, it's hard to be compelled to move to full bidding, but is there a sort of natural selection that those that aren't embracing it will be sort of disadvantaged down the stack or whatever because they've not embraced it? Or how do you think that plays out over the next couple of years?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I've been like quite optimistic that that would happen, even in the previous year or so. However, there seems to be still some reluctance from some of the networks to move fully to bidding, or at least to provide a bidding technology outside of their mediation. So now it's a little bit of that power play, who will provide a bidder for which mediation. So there's definitely something going on there, but yeah, I'd expect that, within year and a half, maybe two, this will become, if not all of them, majority of the networks would do the bidding piece.
Right. So there's still a big role to be done for ad monetization managers and stuff. It's not going away. It's not going to be a sort of push button automation anytime soon. And obviously, yeah, you can see the different power playing positioning. But I mean, overall, do you think if the market were to embrace it overall, does that mean the networks make more money or less money?
For the networks, it's hard to say. Like it's because it has that UA component where the advertisers are paying the networks, and on the other hand, the networks need to pay to the developers, and in between they need to figure out which bids they're going to provide. I'd say that with bidding, what they are getting, and which might not be available to them through a multiple instances technology, is that they get to see every single impression. And then depending on their demand and depending on their technology, it's up to them to manage to win that auction. So I think that they're definitely going to have more visibility because they're going to have a full view of the inventory. So that I think that's something that's in perspective for the networks.
And then, so number one thing they care about then, and this is like we've been kind of digging into this a little bit just because we find it really interesting. Like, does everyone just then? I mean, is it a case of just like, I have an ad impression to fill. Who's going to give me the highest ECPM? And then that one gets it. Is it as sort of simple and straightforward as that?
So I'd say that, and this is interesting, and I'd like to hear your perspective on this as well, because I think you do have some comments around that. From my perspective, I think that most ad monetization managers nowadays are focusing solely on ECPM or some other more intangible factors, like maybe the quality of the ads, maybe removing some of the competitor ads, managing the fill rate and the ECPM. But I'd say that most of the developers nowadays, most of the ad monetization managers would focus solely on ECPM and fill rate without looking into other business aspects of the relationship with the network and things like that. But maybe you have another perspective for the ad monetization managers on that end.
So we've been, obviously we talk to people all the time, and what we've started to see is people look through as you get towards more of a bidding that as all the kind of the obfuscation of the waterfall kind of not disappears but is transitioning. We saw a number of people thinking, well, this isn't just about the ECPM, because you've got the payment delay from the ad networks, and this is one thing. So I'm an ex financial markets guy, and so we started to draw comparisons to like a foreign exchange market for which has been it's one of the most kind of efficient liquid markets in the world, and then digital advertising market. So from a transparency point of view, I think it's great. Anything that increases the transparency and reduces obfuscation as a direction of travel is great. But what we've been very, very surprised about is that in this kind of move to bidding, if you like, the payment terms are not really front of mind. And so we started kind of researching a little bit about, how much of a difference could that make in terms of, let's say I got a $10 CPM, and one network is going to pay me in 15 days time, and the other network is going to pay me in 60 days time. Is that really an effective, measure to compare them on the same level playing field? And go back to it made us think about the financial markets comparison. So super liquid market. And you don't really care who the counterparty is. You just want the best bid or the best bid or best offer, or whichever side of the transaction you're on. So because everyone settles that transaction, the cash, if I buy currency, whatever, I have to pay for it tomorrow. So from the point of view of like, I'm totally agnostic between the counterparty, because provided they don't go bust overnight, that trade is going to settle tomorrow. And then you take that logic and you apply it to the ad networks, and you're kind of thinking, well, that $10 CPM that's going to pay in 15 days, if I have to wait 60 days for that money, it's, I need to think about this differently. So we're kind of toying with the idea of how do you then kind of reorder your stack based not just on the on the effect of CPM, but do you pull in some kind of discount factor to say, what is this in real money? Now, in real money, if you were to say, well, okay, I have to borrow the $10 for 15 days versus 60 days or 45 days, whatever it may be, that's going to make a little bit of impact to it. But what we saw developers look at who were tuning into this kind of way of thinking was like, this is not really just about the interest cost to borrow the money for 10 days. This is about the opportunity cost of not being able to reinvest. And the particular genre we saw it happening in was in hyper casual, which obviously the timescales can be really short. So, particularly you see hyper casual developers normally looking to go with publishers because the capital intensiveness of pushing a game all the way up the charts could be really you can go into millions to do that. So then we started looking at, well, if I'm having to do this, I'm having to spend my 20 or 30 or 50,000 a day on this and it is capital intensive because it takes so long to get the money out. So should I then be thinking, this idea of is it time to rethink it based on who's going to pay when and the opportunity cost? How much money am I leaving on the table of not taking this money and reinvesting it into my UA? So I think it's we don't have some kind of silver bullet. We don't have some big grand reveal, but the more conversations we've had about this as the world goes to bidding, this idea of a discount metric, I think is important. So I think it's not something that people have been that focused on to date, but I don't know. Do you think that's something that people will start to focus on a little bit more over time?
So I have to admit that I haven't been taking this particular factor into an account when I'm managing mediation on behalf of my clients. But it seems to me that having worked with different developers of different sizes, from companies with 3,000 employees and who have liquidity and they have a lot of cash laying around, to companies that they don't have, just simply don't have that much resources sitting around. It seems to me that depending on who you are, what kind of developer you are, you mentioned also hyper casual developers for whom this seems particularly important and particularly relevant. So am I right to say that this is kind of it depends very much on who you are and what you're trying to achieve? Because if you're a hyper casual developer and you're waiting for 60 or 90 days or 45 days to get those payments, then you're burning a lot of cash every single day to bring those users. It seems that taking this discounted rate, like ECPM or however we want to call it, would be a very important thing if you want to be smart about how you invest and how you're managing your money.
Yeah, I think it depends on what sort of size and scale you are, right? So and look, if you want to use the sort of the intellectual capital efficiency argument, it should apply to everyone because the concept's the same, the numbers are just bigger. So would it be, but if you have, if you're generating several $1 million a month in revenues, are you really that focused on it? Because you'll also have large credit facilities and stuff anyway. One of the things we have seen is some of the networks doing doing set-off transactions. So for example, they say, hey, you've got all this money in my monetization. If you spend it on my user acquisition, I'll flip it and allow you to do that. So you don't have to wait the 60 days because you're spending it back on UA and it's staying within my kind of closed loop network. And the pushback we saw on that was really some people that were kind of focused on wanting the best of breed, right? So you might be the best monetization network for me, but actually the user acquisition is not as good. So I'm taking a second best option in order to do this, just to solve this problem. So that's something we've definitely seen a few times. And obviously there are different ways. If you use something completely third party, you get around that problem. But yeah, I thought, just like an interesting direction of travel. I thought it's great overall for the industry that you have this this rise towards greater transparency. Ultimately, the developers are gonna gain. Open question. I don't see why the advertising networks shouldn't be big beneficiaries as well. You just drive all the inefficiency out, and then the market grows for everyone. So that would be our hope and expectation. But yeah, any other? I don't know I know we're kind of out of time in a second, but I don't know, any other sort of like closing thoughts or.
Yeah, I think that like in general, it's a very interesting idea that you brought here, that like, it's not only about the ECPMs, it's not only about the fill rate. You have to take other things into an account, especially if you're heavily relying on spending a lot of money in UA. So it's not the same when you're going to get the money that you're making every single day. I'd say, like, is there something, maybe this is something to think about, or maybe you already have something in mind. Is there a way like to calculate, okay, if I'm getting a $10 ECPM right now, what is the difference if a network is going to pay me in 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, 90 days? Is there a way for an ad monetization manager to kind of have a formula, an idea, okay, I should still give the advantage for $9 ECPM because I'm going to get it much faster?
Yeah, I mean, most people we've seen just calculate that stuff themselves. But yeah, I agree. It would be useful to have a resource like that. So maybe that's something we'll look at.
There's an idea.
Cool. Great. Well, listen, Chris, I don't know if we've got time for any.
Yeah, we have got time. We've always got time for you and
Awesome.
questions. There's a chunk more in here. Some of them are very specific, so I'll throw them out, and you might not be able to answer them because I certainly couldn't. So if you can't answer these or you don't want to, it's totally fine. Just say so for whatever reason. So I'm going to start with one from Sai, who says, AdMob mediation claims they have 200 plus bidding sources. It looks too good to be true. If this is the case, why are many companies not using this service? Is 200 bidding sources? That sounds like a lot to me. I know you don't want to comment on AdMob, obviously, or a particular company, but does that seem reasonable?
I can take this one.
Yeah, go on then. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Martin's been very quiet there and decided not to play. So.
I'd say that this is a good marketing, at least for probably targeting people who are not that much into the matter. But I'd say that each mediation nowadays has probably 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 bidders at most.
Right.
And probably 2 or 3 of them are the big ones. Everything else is just DSPs and other technologies which you can call bidding if you want. But I don't think there's, not to comment on any company, but like I don't think there's any mediation in the market right now that is offering 200 or any number of hundreds bidders at the moment. So yeah.
Fair enough. No, I'm sure lots of companies use lots of methods of marketing. Let's assume we're talking about sort of, as you say, sort of 6 to maybe 10 bidders, and 200 might be as other sources. I've got another one very specific question, and if you can't answer this, I get it's all above my head. This. So there's a question here. What is the minimum DAU needed to achieve good fill rates and impressions for 100% ad monetized game in tier 3 to 4 geos like Brazil, India, Mexico, Argentina? That sounds like a question someone should pay for consulting for, but I don't know. Does that make sense? Is there any insight you can offer, or does that need to be discussed at length?
Yeah, I'm happy to give like a quick comment on that. I don't think that the number of daily active users that you have will impact your fill rates or ECPM. As long as you are working with the right partners and managing the mediation in the right way, the fill rate should be high. I do appreciate the fact that tier 3, tier 4 markets might be more challenging to fill than the US, let's say, and other tier 1 countries. But still, if you're doing a good job with the mediation, fill rate should not be an issue, regardless of how many daily active users you have.
Great answer. Very good so far. Very impressed with this. I've got combined a couple of questions together, which might, I don't know if they're relevant or not. we've talked about it a lot in the show and before about IDFA and changes. Have these kind of privacy changes had any impact on advertising rates? And I get the question here is another question which is kind of related is, are there any kind of clear winners and losers in terms of kind of monetization techniques because of this? Are there different advertising opportunities that are being created now because certain things might be harder to monitor than before?
I'd say that, yeah, definitely IDFA had an impact. Maybe we don't even see the full, the full scale of the impact yet. I'd say that ECPMs have gone down, especially depending, of course, on each and every game, how much, how big your ECPMs were previously. I'd say that, the drop could be between 20% to 50%.
Wow.
Yeah, so definitely there could be some.
That's an impact. Yeah, that's
a significant impact. And yeah, in terms of winners and losers, I think that there are some networks who have not been focused so much on personalized ads and more focusing on the contextual side of things. And they're at least in the short term, they're winning now because they didn't have much to lose compared to the previous period. And yeah, the developers, I guess that, setting aside a lot of development resources to deal with these changes did not do them so well in terms of, focusing on core business and developing new features.
It will obviously all change again, no doubt, in a month's time or so. It's certainly interesting times. Let's have a look. This is kind of a question. I'll try and get through one, maybe two more. This kind of question I kind of had listening to you from the publisher developer side in terms of the monetization sort of manager. If everyone's doing header bidding and every ad's being auctioned by your kind of provider, does that mean a lot less work for the monetization guy? Because like if everyone's bidding on every ad, then the amount of shopping around needed is presumably less, right? Or am I is that naive?
Yeah, I think that there is going to be less operational work on the mediation side. Martin here introduced this interesting idea of taking into account some other factors. So this might be something, where ad monetization managers would need to negotiate these deals with the networks and try to push back on the lengthy payment terms. And, the technology is changing. The thing that we have the bidders right now, maybe the form of the bidders changes, maybe we get more control from the networks, more insights. So, things are changing as we speak. So it's hard to say whether or not we would, completely leave it up to the mediation to do the thing on its own, or there's still going to be, significant amount of work that each developer will have to do.
Cool. I've one last question, which I can't. There's a few others in here. I'm sure they can seek you out afterwards and ask for advice. You seem to be a very knowledgeable chap. So how much of this is something I'm concerned with, how much of the advertising revenue in the mobile games ecosystem is still internal game advertising versus brand advertising? We always see the ads, so it's advertising of the games, pointing to the games. Are we seeing steady growth of brand advertising, external advertising, that's kind of money coming in to the industry as opposed to circulating, I guess?
Well, I'd say that in general, vast majority of the advertising money that is circling around the gaming industry is still coming from games and apps, so performance marketing, whereas brands, I'd say, are still a small portion of the revenue. Whether or not it's increasing, I think it is, like with Facebook and AdMob in the picture. I think that they're helping on this matter. There are some networks that are specializing in brand advertising. But yeah, the performance I've seen is still definitely limited, potentially only on tier 1 countries as well. So yeah, you would not be able to scale with brand advertising at the still.
Fair enough. On that note, I'm going to say a huge thank you, Božo, and let you return to your sweltering conditions at home there. And thanks so much for sharing your insight.
Thank you so much.
Appreciated. You can track down Božo in the meeting system or discourse me later on. I'm sure he'll be able to help if you have other questions.